This is the GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is flyer number 345, entitled MGTOW, Our King, and the Sixth Mass Extinction. Description. This flyer shows how the MGTOWs and masculists can kill two birds with one stone. That is, to liberate men from manslavery and wageslavery to the hated fluffie parasites who want to manslave men to pay for women to have babies in a grossly overcrowded world, and to stop the sixth mass extinction of species which are dying out due to their habitats being destroyed so that too many human beings can grow food. MGTOW and masculist rejection of paternity will cause the world population to be reduced to the Georgia Guidestones recommended level of about 500 million. Flyer itself. MGTOW, Our King, and the Sixth Mass Extinction by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. There are too many people on the planet. I agree with the Georgia Guidestones that the Earth's population should be reduced to about 500 million. Which means that most of humanity has to die off, not necessarily killed, just not replaced, by discouraging paternity, so that young men continue to reject being fathers, thus solving the problem of too many people naturally. Why do I feel that there are too many people on the planet? Because the capacity of the planet to cope with large human populations is limited, finite. If there are too many people, we affect the planet badly, for example, by exhausting the Earth's raw materials, heating up the planet, so that the coastal cities get flooded due to rising sea levels, due to the melting of the ice caps at the poles, by overcrowding of populations, leading to a lower quality of life, by causing more extreme weather as global warming causes shifts in weather patterns, more hurricanes, more droughts, etc. And especially, and this is the focus of this flyer, by causing the mass die-off of the number of species, the sixth mass extinction on this Earth, which this time is not caused by massive volcano eruptions, nor being hit by a large asteroid, but caused by humans, too many of them, who are clearing land for farming, to grow food, to feed too many useless eaters, and thus killing off millions of species of living creatures which can no longer survive due to the loss of their habitats. It took millions of years to evolve these species that an overpopulated world is killing off by the day, ending forever creatures that cannot be replaced, a major cosmic tragedy. Anyone who thinks about the sixth mass extinction, that is, the humanly caused massive die-off of millions of species, sees it as a major tragedy, something that humanity will deeply regret in future years. So how can we stop this massive die-off? By depopulating, by reducing the number of useless eaters on the planet. In terms of the total number of people on the planet, does it make much difference if there are 7 billion people on the Earth compared to 6 billion, or 4 billion, or 500 million? ? I think not. So if humanity wants to stop this tragic, massive die-off, this sixth mass extinction, then we need to find an effective solution to the problem. This flyer provides such a solution, and it is called MGTOW and Our King. That's A-R-C-I-N-G, Our King. MGTOW, men going their own way, is an important branch of the manslave movement. These are men who see the toxicity of the divorce courts taken over by the fluffy feminist hypocrites. That is, by women who claim they are feminists in the parliaments, pushing for equal rights with men by law, but reject equal obligations with men in sharing up the burden of earning the living, by bothering to get a career-competent education, by bothering to study career-competent majors at high school and college, so that they become FIPS, financially independent persons, as adults, and not parasite off the money of a man, as do fluffies. That is, traditional women who expect to be able to sexploit men, to work for them, to be manslaves to them. Masculists, that is, manslivers, who are a lot more political and verbally aggressive than the MGTOWs, have a hatred of fluffies, whom they see as, quote, immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin, to be wiped out by being totally ignored, not even being pumped and dumped, so that their fluffy parasite genes are removed from the gene pool, so forcing them to rot on a shelf, utterly rejected by men, by masculists and MGTOWs. End quote. Fluffy feminists are seen by masculists as hypocrites because these women want to have their cake and to eat it too. They accept equal rights with men, but reject equal obligations with men by rejecting the moral pressure from the masculists to fip up, that is, to bother to become FIPS, so that men can be freed from the traditional manslave role of working for a woman, so that she can raise her kids in a house that he pays for. MGTOWs and masculists see the toxicity of the divorce courts is taken over by the hated fluffy feminist hypocrites as so bad that they react by refusing to marry, reject paternity, and go their own way, spending their money on themselves. It's the paternity rejection of the MGTOWs and masculists that is the indirect solution to the tragedy of the sixth mass extinction. Thus, for a few generations, humanity has the luxury to reject paternity so that the global population is reduced, but not to total extinction, of course, but reduced enough so that the total global population is reduced to a level that the Earth can cope with, so that all the horrible things that overpopulation is causing, as mentioned above, can be removed. So, masculists and MGTOWs can use the sixth mass extinction phenomenon as a political tool to persuade more men to go MGTOW and masculist by advertising the considerable advantages of this lifestyle to men, so that they adopt this lifestyle and hence reject paternity, thus lowering the world's population. After a few generations, once the world population has been reduced to the desired amount, say 500 million, as advocated by the Georgia, that's the state in the US, ad-libbing here, Georgia Guidestones, YouTube it or Google it, then some social engineering can be employed to encourage men to be fathers again by, for example, men-fairing the gender laws, making divorce no longer toxic for men the way it is today, by bringing in the paternity rejection rate, and men-fairing the many legal and social discriminations against men across the board. But for the moment, humanity needs to get its population down. So how to persuade men to adopt the MGTOW/masculist childless lifestyle? This flyer provides the answer to this question, and that is by advertising to men the considerable advantages of the arcing, A-R-C, the arcing lifestyle. Arcing is after retirement careering. That is usually the third of life in which men retire from waging. That is the second third of life in which they are earning a wage, a salary, some of which they save so as to be able to retire much earlier in life than is customary, so that they can devote the rest of their lives doing what they love, developing themselves and not being manslaves to bloody fluffy parasites, paying for fluffies to have children when the world population is already many billions too many. Women will hate men's arcing, because if women want to have babies, and if most men refuse to give women their sperm, then these women will have to raise their own kids on their own. And as most women know, to be a female careerist and to look after small children at the same time is virtually impossible. So that women who do attempt to do both at the same time usually burn out by the time they're in their 40s. So women desperately want to be able to get their financial claws, fluffy style, into some gullible manslave. But MGTOWs and masculists are persuading millions of men to reject being manslaves to fluffy parasites. Women, especially fluffy feminist hypocrites, will then accuse men, especially MGTOWs and masculists, of being selfish, of not contributing to the creation and raising of the next generation. The masculists and MGTOWs will then hit back at these fluffy feminists by saying that it is women who are 100 times more selfish because it is women who want the babies, and then expect men to pay for women to have them. Individual women want to have babies because they evolved that way, with their DNA pushing them to reproduce. But the world's population is already way too large, so humanity needs to reduce it, to lower it significantly. And a very effective way to do that is via MGTOW and masculist paternity rejection. The masculists, in their characteristic verbal aggressiveness, will accuse the fluffy feminists of being 100 times more selfish by wanting to have kids in a greatly overcrowded world, and to have men be their manslaves working for women, so that these mothers can sit on their fat parasitic asses in a house that her gullible manslave pays for. How is the arcing lifestyle superior for men? Because it offers a much higher level of freedom for men, releasing them from the chains of manslavery and opening up their lives to self-development, into becoming something that men want to become. Most men today are manslaves, wage slaves, working to earn money so that some fluffy manslaver can have her kids paid for. Such men are not free to pursue their own dreams, doing what they love, rather they do what they have to do to earn money to pay for his manslaver fluffy wife. Arcing men, however, can have a third or even a half of his life free from manslavery, from wage slavery. For example, he can get well educated, gaining a real skill that the economy values and pays well for. So in the first third of his life, the prepper stage, he gets a good education. This may take him the first quarter of a century of his life. He then enters the second third or second phase of his life, the waging phase, in which he earns good money, saves and invests well to save enough money so that he can retire early, so that he can become an arker, perhaps move to a much poorer country where the cost of living is much lower, so that the purchasing power of his savings greatly increases, maybe doubling or more. He then spends the rest of his life, often a third or even a half of his life, doing what he loves to do, what he chooses to do, rather than being a manslave to some bloody fluffy, some immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin fluffy. When a man is doing something that is his passion, he is usually much happier with life. He need not give up on sex, however. He can twef if he wants, that is, have a regular sexual relationship with a woman who is herself a FIP, financially independent person, and has her own apartment. Twef equals 2A, 2F equals 2 apartments, 2 FIPs. When the relationship dies, the two of them just walk away, cost-free to the man. Thus, the arcing lifestyle for a man is truly liberating. It's men's lib in the true sense. Masculists claim that a man's life is essentially all about arcing. The first 2 phases of a man's life are really just preparation for his arcing, the primary goal of his life, to be free to do what he loves doing, developing himself, spending his money only on himself, and not to have it leached upon by some fluffy parasite who wants to have kids and have some gullible manslave pay for her to be able to stay at home raising them, while he is the manslave, the wage slave, who pays for it all. Fuck that, say the masculists and MGTOWs, who liberate themselves by rejecting paternity, by rejecting manslavery, by rejecting fluffies, and redirect their lives towards their own liberation, their own love affair with their own lives, doing what they love doing, rather than being forced to earn money so that some hated fluffy parasite can have her kids in his house, all paid for by his labour, in a world where there are already way too many people. So we have here a way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. By liberating men from manslavery to fluffy parasites, by freeing men to be able to live the arcing lifestyle, we also stop the 6th mass extinction. the massive species die off, because with billions of young men arcing and rejecting paternity, the population gets reduced, so that much less habitat for the world's species is destroyed for farming to feed billions of useless eaters, so that these species can survive and not be wiped out. Thus, in a manner of speaking, women's evolved push to have babies is wiping out the world's species, causing the 6th mass extinction. Masculists and MGTOWs reject women's hunger to have babies by refusing to give women their sperm, forcing women to be babyless, which will force women to vote with men, to men-fair the gender laws, so that men will be more prepared to be fathers again, so that men will not have to pay the current horrible price of being financially massacred in the hated, fluffy, feminist, hypocrite divorce court system of Western countries. A lot of men actually want to be fathers, but in today's world don't dare to, because they refuse to play Russian roulette with their lives, in which if they become fathers they face a 1 chance in 4 of being financially destroyed by the hated fluffy feminist divorce court system, losing custody of his kids with 90% probability, losing his house to his fluffy ex-wife, forced to pay child support to kids he will barely see, losing half his stuff to his fluffy parasite ex-wife, and often forced to pay alimony to her for the rest of her life, so she can continue to parasite off him after the divorce as she did before the divorce. Men are waking up in their billions that this divorce risk created by the hated fluffy feminist hypocrites is utterly unacceptable, and vote with their feet, refusing to marry, rejecting paternity, and spending their money on themselves, spitting on fluffies as vermin, to be punished, to be wiped out, to be ignored, forcing women to fip up. Even if nearly all women do fip up, and the gender laws are men-faired, so that being a father is much less risky for men, then the considerable advantages of arcing for men will not go away. For several generations, men will continue to arc, so that the world population can be reduced, so that the 6th mass extinction and general environmental damage can be stopped. Thus, masculism and MGTOW as social movements will have profound historical significance that future historians will write about. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. In brackets, contains links to 300 plus YouTube, Minds, BitChute, masculist essays/videos, and to the freely downloadable book, Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Manslaves to Women, an e-textbook of 300 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses. Ciao.